Good morning, everyone. We are taking our Torah study to a whole new level this morning because our nation is faced with such problems that we are facing fear and anxiety. There's a war in Israel. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, and the totally dysfunctional country of South Africa is accusing Israel of war crimes. In the International Criminal Court of Justice, you cannot make this stuff up. It is absolutely laughable if it wasn't so
Bernie
true.
Sanders is bringing something to the Congress.
Got shot down 72 to 28.
Yeah,
So these are tough times, folks. We're living through tough times. And the question is, how are we Jews supposed to respond? What is the first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning? I challenge you to think about the answer to that question. Do you react to what's going on around you, or do you initiate the energy around you? If you wake up in the morning and you check your email, you check the newspaper, then you are reacting to external stimuli. But if you are able to apply the timeless wisdom of Torah and Chassidus, to be able to recognize and realize the secret to transforming your outcome, to embrace the truth of how to make miracles happen, to realize the power that you already harbor within you, and to channel it, you'll have a totally different experience. Friends, I'm going to tell you right here, right now, that each and every one of us has the power to turn the tide of this war. I know that's a big statement, but each and every single one of us already has the tools to turn the tide of this war. People tell me, Rabbi, my 94-year-old member tells me, Rabbi, I want to go to Israel. I'll pick up a gun and I'll shoot. And I said to him, listen, sir, we love you. Nobody needs you to shoot a gun. What we do need from you, you're in a different division of this war, okay? You know, if you're in the Navy and you tell me that you want to fly helicopters, you're making a big mistake, right? If you're in intelligence and you tell me that you want to do infantry, you're making a big mistake. Friends, we are in intelligence. Intelligence is here. It's also here. We're also in emotion. We're in emotion and intelligence. Between these two, your brain and your heart, you harbor the power to turn the tide of this war. And what we're about to do today is that we're going to actually learn about this idea in the original text of the Rebbe. And I have to tell you that this text changed my life. I was 21 years old. I was 21 years old. It was 2002, I think it was. I was in Leeds, England. And I was in the yeshiva. I was in Shlichus. I was sent as a yeshiva student from New York to be in the yeshiva in Leeds, England. And what happened was that at one point there was a war in Israel, in Judea and Samaria, mislabeled by enemies of Israel and by Jews who drink the Kool-Aid propaganda, mislabeled as the West Bank, right? This is Judea and Samaria. Jews don't occupy Judea and Samaria, both of which are timeless ancient Jewish names, right? It's like saying Rabbi Vigler occupied Chabad of Palm Beach Gardens. Like, hello? Like, how does that even make any sense, right? The Americans are occupying America, right? Okay, makes no sense, right? But if you change the name, then maybe maybe I might sell. So what happened was that at that point there was war in Israel, and I was on Friday Miftzayim, which is what yeshiva students of Chabad do. They go out on Friday afternoons, and we lay tefillin, we do mitzvahs with other Jews. And as I was there in downtown Leeds, which is very close to the city of Bradford, the largest Muslim population in England, we were surrounded, me and my friend were surrounded by about 30 Arab youths who were provoking us. They were trying to start with us. They were trying to provoke us. And so we just tried to shake them off our tail. We went into a store. They followed us. Into another store. They followed us. Right? We realized that we were outnumbered. So I told my friend, come with me. We went back on the bus and we were out of there. Phil was with it. So we went. I don't know. Maybe he needs help. So we went back on the bus. That night, it was a Friday. I spent all of Friday night with my Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Chaim Miller, who's the author of the Practical Tanya and some of the Chumashim that we use. And I asked him, what is the Jewish approach to fear? And it was then that he opened my eyes to this talk. Which is the Rebbe's approach to understanding Moses' fear. Moses was afraid. Can you imagine Moses being afraid? And what made Moses afraid? And we'll learn in this talk about how Moses' fear is actually what led to the negative result of the fulfillment of his fear. And it's in this talk that the Rebbe explains. And I've spoken about this before, but the purpose of today is to dive deeper into the original text so that we can actually appreciate it for ourselves, because this is life-changing. And in this talk, the Rebbe says that had Moses not feared, his fear would never have come to fruition. Do you realize how big that is? When you fear, what you're afraid of is given energy and comes true. When you are able to curb your fear and exhibit not fear but faith, then the thing that you're afraid of does not come to fruition. Do you realize how big that is? What that means is that if you've got a financial problem, if you're waiting for someone to say yes to your offer, you've got a choice. You can sit there and worry 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until they get back with you with an answer. Or you can choose to be proactive about it. You can choose to be so uber positive about this issue. It's a choice. And it's not just positive because you're ostrich burying his head in the sand. Positive because, and we'll learn about that in this talk, that's what's so critical about the original text. Positive because you know that God Almighty is on your side. That's why. And if you can do that and say, Hashem will never let me down, I'm going to be successful. This is going to be an amazing deal. I'm going to get what I want. That positivity is what's going to ensure your positive result. Your fear is what's going to ensure your negative result. If you think that it was JFK who said that FDR who said that we have nothing to fear but fear itself, it wasn't it. This is a timeless Jewish wisdom that FDR tapped into. We truly have nothing to fear but fear itself. And let me tell you, that's a lot harder than it sounds. It's a lot harder than it sounds. You apply this to health. You apply this to financial. You apply this to marital problems, to relationships, to fertility. And you apply this to local problems, and you apply this to global problems. Friends, we are in intelligence. Okay? 8,200 is Israel's intelligence unit. They know what Bashar Assad is eating for breakfast and who he's dining with and what he's going to order before he knows what he's going to order for breakfast, right? Is he still alive, Bashar Assad? Haven't heard from those guys in a while.
Not practicing dentistry.
Okay, so 8,200 is Israel's IDF intelligence unit. Friends, the IDF needs you. Not to sit and watch your television all day long, cursing at the screen and forwarding useless emails about the latest anti-Semite that you've discovered in some United Nations or some congressman somewhere. That's not what Israel needs. They don't need you to spread fear. What they need you is to spread positivity. Fearless, shameless, unapologetic positivity. Let's take a look at this idea. Let's dive straight in. Now, I did post the link over here. I'm going to put it again in the chat for those that are watching us live online. The chat. So now you have the link for those online. Anybody that wants to buy this book, this is what it's called. It's called Selections from the Likutei Sichos. It's a 5-volume set printed by Kehot Publications. Pretty nice book, actually. Okay, so, but you don't have to buy the book if you don't want to. You can just follow the link online and follow along with me there. Okay, good. I think it's a very nice book to buy and own in your house, because buying Jewish books, good books, Torah books, not nonsense like fiction and Deepak Chopra, but real Torah stuff, right? Real Torah stuff. You buy this stuff, you put it in there. You put it in your bookshelf, it's going to bring holiness to your house. Now, Pearl Motor J says that was Sir Winston Churchill quote, Rabbi. Really?
No.
Wonderful point nonetheless.
No, it wasn't.
Pearl Motor J, I have to tell you, fact check. My people over here, they're standing here with me. But hey, either way, I'm saying that they weren't the original authors, whether it was Churchill or the other guy. No, hang on. Churchill said victory in our times. Didn't he say that?
Right.
Right? The white paper.
That's not what you said.
That's what I
That
said.
was, that was Chamberlain. That's
Chamberlain. Sorry, big difference.
Chamberlain.
All right, forget it. I'm moving back to my field here.
Stay in your
Okay,
wheelhouse.
stay in my
Stay
lane.
in your
All right, thank you.
Peace in our time.
Okay, peace in our times.
We heard FDR say it.
Okay, let's go. I'm on page 3 for those that have the physical book. You have a physical book? All right, let's go. Now, we've learned this before, folks. For those of you who've been here before with me for a while, we know the doctrine of blind trust, okay? We've learned this. We've learned the gates of trust at the beginning of the pandemic. We solved the pandemic. Remember that? With that positivity. We ended the pandemic, guys, remember? Now it's time to end the war. We got to pull out the big guns right now. And the big playing field ground zeros in your mind and heart. Let's go straight into this. The Torah first mentions Moses' actions as an adult in the following narrative. This is really the first story that we know about Moses as an adult. The Torah tells us like this. And Moshe came of age and he went out to his brethren. This is a direct quote from Torah. He saw an Egyptian man beating one of his Hebrew brethren and he smote the Egyptian. Remember the story? He went out the next day and he saw 2 Hebrew men quarreling. He said to the wicked one, "Why are you hitting your fellow?" The wicked one replied, the wicked Jew replied, "Do you intend to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" Moshe became frightened. Ooh.
There you go.
Moshe became frightened. Now, what happens when Moses finds an anti-Semite attacking a Jew? What does he do?
Kills him.
Decisive action. What happens when Moses finds a Jew attacking a Jew? Now he becomes frightened.
Challenge. It's a challenge.
Because anti-Semitism might be dangerous, but Jewish infighting is far, far more lethal.
Mhm.
Okay? He becomes frightened. And he says, this is very critical, the following words. Moshe became frightened, direct quote from the Bible. And he said, "The matter has indeed become known." The next verse, Pharaoh heard. What matter has indeed become known? What matter? The matter of him killing the Egyptian. This Jew threatened to tell Pharaoh on Moses, to rattle, to slander Moses to Pharaoh, so Pharaoh would want to kill him. So Moses becomes afraid. The matter has indeed become known. Pharaoh heard, and he sought to kill Moshe, and Moshe fled. Now, there's a whole story in the Medrash here that Moshe he is about to be executed, and his neck turned to stone, and he ran away. It was a bit of a miracle, but that's not in the written Torah. That's in the oral Torah. We're not even going into that. On the phrase, and Moshe became frightened, the Rebbe points out that Rashi comments. What is Rashi? You found it? Found the link?
No. Where did you post this?
Oh, you know what? Did I post it to the group? Let me see.
I didn't see it,
You know what? I'm going to post it right now to the community chat. Okay. Anybody wants to join the community chat? We have a Chabad community WhatsApp, which you can get by emailing office@jewishgardens.com. Office@jewishgardens.com. Okay. Now, good. So let's keep on going. Now, the Rebbe, I posted the chat. You should have it right now on the
For
WhatsApp.
the millionaires?
No. The community. Oh, you're not in the community WhatsApp.
I'm a-
Rob, you're like out of touch. You.
Yeah.
The daily communications get posted to the community WhatsApp. Now it's on Millionaires. Okay, good. Let's keep on going. Sorry, guys. Fine.
Right now.
Sorry about that. On the phrase, and Moses became frightened, the Rashi comments. Now, Rashi is the super commentary of Torah. What does Rashi have to say about this verse, and Moshe became frightened? What's the big deal? By the way, let me ask you a question. Tell me one other character in the Torah that we know about their inner emotions. Can you think of anybody, Stephen? One other character in Torah. Can you tell me what Joseph was feeling when his brothers wanted to sell him as a slave? Can you tell me what he was feeling? We can imagine, but does the Torah tell us?
No.
Do we know what Rachel was thinking while she noticed that Leah was under the chuppah instead of her? Torah doesn't tell us.
King David.
What was King David feeling? When?
And they tried to kill him.
Well, King David was writing about his own, that he was the autobiographer, right?
We knew King Saul was jealous. We knew Abraham was afraid when he was traveling into Egypt. with
Hang on, we knew King Saul.
Sarah.
One thing at a time. King Saul was jealous. Let me think about that.
Wanted to kill David. felt
Okay.
threatened, paranoid.
Who else? Paranoid, right? So, what was the second example? Abraham was what?
Abraham, when he was traveling to Egypt with Sarah, and had to say that it was his.
We know that he was afraid.
sister. He had to say it was
He
his
was
sister.
afraid they'd
yeah.
kill him.
I don't think we know his emotion. The Torah doesn't tell us his emotion. We know what he did. We know his
I
actions.
think it can be inferred. But
Inferred. Very good. Here it's explicit. Even by Saul, we have to look closely. How much the Torah emphasizes the emotion. Okay, let's go deeper. What does Rashi have? What? Oh, Yaakov, correct. Yaakov, we know it says, Vayira Yaakov me'od vayetzer lo. And Yaakov was very fearful, and he was exceedingly distressed. Now, I've got a lot to say about that. That's going to come up in this talk as well. Those are the two examples, Moses and Jacob. Okay. What does Rashi have to say? The verse should be understood, it says Rashi, according to its plain meaning. That's the first interpretation of Rashi. The verse should be understood according to its plain meaning. Okay, fine. I mean, that doesn't sound too amazing to me. Okay, alternatively, according to the Medrash, he was worried because he saw wicked informers amongst the Jewish people. He thought, if this is so, perhaps they are not worthy of being redeemed. So Rashi explains on a deeper level that what's going on over here, that why was Moses afraid? Because Moses was worrying all this time. Why is the Jewish people worthy of being in such slavery? And now he's worried. He's like, oh, I think I found the reason. Because they can't get along with each other. That's probably the reason. So this is a deeper interpretation that's not literal. Literal means he was afraid because he was scared. This one says he was worried because, well, how are we ever going to get out of here if we can't get along with each other? Now, the question arises, very interesting with regard to the present situation. Very interesting. I want to tell you, 9 months ago, I met with Naftali Bennett, the former Prime Minister of Israel. And at my conversation with him, and I wrote about it in my email, 9 months ago, he said to me, Rabbi Vigler, tell the people, tell the community, that there's only been 3 commonwealths, 3 independent sovereign states in the land of Israel, in all of Jewish history. The first 2 lasted 75 years. And they were vanquished not by anti-Semites, they fell because of internal conflict. He said to me, we're now at 75-year mark in the third one. We're at the 75-year mark. We're in grave, grave danger of making the mistakes of history. Do you remember what was going on in Israel, Erev Yom Kippur this year? Do you remember what's going on in Israel, Erev Simchas Torah this year?
Right.
Heaven help us. Heaven help us for the shameless Jewish anti-Semitism. I had somebody call me the other day to tell me the reason why so few religious Jewish soldiers are dying in battle. I said, sir, please stop, because I don't tolerate Jewish anti-Semites. He said, no. The reason is because they're not enlisting. I said, please, you're insulting me deeply, right? On many, many levels. I cannot hear such Jewish anti-Semitism. But somebody else said it. I said, then don't be a mouthpiece for Jewish anti-Semitism. Use that little brain in your head to process information and realize that you are being a tool for Jewish anti-Semitism. We have zero tolerance for this behavior. At the end of this conversation, I think I turned him around, but boy, was I upset. We cannot handle Jewish anti-Semites. This is absolutely out of the question. But today, we're not even talking about the deeper interpretation of Rashi. Today, we're going to talk about the literal interpretation about Moses' fear. Let's go further. The question arises, why does the plain meaning that Moses feared for his life? Because it had become public knowledge that he killed the Egyptian not suffice. Why is that not enough of an answer? Why does Rashi need to give us a deeper answer? Why must Rashi also cite the interpretation of the Medrash, which is non-literal, by the way? And Rashi's MO is literal interpretation of Torah. That Moshe's concern was that his brethren would not deserve to be redeemed, which is not at all alluded to in the verse. Like, why does Rashi need to give us an allegoric interpretation when he could have easily gone with the first interpretation? He was afraid. Why was he afraid? Because the word was out. In particular, his interpretation of Moses' fear warrants explanation because it also necessitates interpreting the continuation of the verse. And he said, the matter has indeed become known in a non-literal manner. So if you're going to go with Rashi's second interpretation, that it was an understanding of the deeper reason why they were in exile, then you're going to have to continue that non-literal, that allegorical interpretation to the next verse. Instead of its plain meaning that Moses was concerned about the consequences of his having killed the Egyptian. Another explanation now becomes necessary. Therefore, when commenting on the latter phrase, after stating that this phrase should be interpreted plainly, Rashi also cites the Midrashic interpretation that the matter became known to me, regarding which I wondered, how did Israel sin so severely to warrant their being subjugated with back-breaking labor? So this is that question. Why can't Rashi suffice with a plain interpretation? It is possible to offer a plain resolution of the above questions. Rashi was seeking to address a general difficulty raised by the verse. And Moshe became frightened. And he said, the matter has indeed become known. What's the problem? What's bothering Rashi that Rashi needs to give us more than one literal interpretation? Why does the Torah, because what's bothering Rashi is, why does the Torah need to tell us this point? Why does the Torah need to tell us his feelings? This is what's bothering Rashi. The Torah tells us how people behaved, that Eve ate from the fruit of the tree. We don't know how Adam felt after God cursed Adam and Eve. We don't know these emotions. Who cares? You don't want to worry about emotions. Go to your therapist. Why do we need the Torah to tell us about how they were feeling? This is bothering Rashi. Why does the Torah mention this point? After all, Moses' fear did not lead to any immediate action, or so it seems. For he did not flee to Midian until Pharaoh actually heard about the matter and sought to kill him. If Moses would have fled after his emotion, okay, maybe that makes sense. So his emotion, his fear would have led to an action. But his emotion is useless. So he was scared. It's a waste of ink in Torah. Why do we have to waste our time reading this in Torah about Moses' emotions, seemingly? Sorry. Yitzchak, right?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, Moses is brilliant. In other words, he knows that what's going to happen, what the next steps will be. So his fears, he knows that when Paro hears about this, that his whole position will change. Like he's right now.
But who cares how he feels? How about if the Torah just said, and Pharaoh heard?
Oh, because he's a prince of Egypt.
Right, he's going to take a dramatic step. His whole life is going to change. How do you justify his action if you don't understand what?
Which action did he take?
He flees.
He flees when Pharaoh hears. He flees when Pharaoh tries to execute him. That's what happens. The Torah could easily have said, he meets the Jew being attacked by the anti-Semite, he kills him. Then the Torah could have said that he meets the Jew who's attacking the Jew, and he says, I'm going to tell on you. Then the Torah could have said that Pharaoh finds out, Pharaoh wants him executed, and he runs away. Nothing would have happened. We would have missed nothing. Nothing. In fact, the Rebbe's about to say, we could have missed the whole second story, by the way. The whole second story was totally unnecessary. It could have just said, he killed the Egyptian, Pharaoh heard, he flees, finished. Let's see. One might raise a similar question. Why was it necessary for the Torah to relate the entire narrative of the interaction between Moses and the two Israelites, Dasan and Aviram? After all, the Torah could have related that Pharaoh heard about killing the Egyptian and Moses fled. Simple. The entire episode describing two Hebrew men quarreling in their rebuke of Moshe, who appointed you, do you intend to kill me, appears unnecessary. Or so it seems. And where this is going, friends, is that it was Moses' fear that was critical to the outcome of the story. Had Moses not feared, Pharaoh would never have found out. It was only because Moses was afraid that Pharaoh would find out. That's why he found out. And this is life-changing, friends. This is absolutely life-changing. What's critical is to read this in the Rebbe's original words, so you can see it for yourself, something which we as a group have never done before. However, in light of Rashi's commentary on the phrase, and Pharaoh heard, this issue is resolved. There Rashi states, they, Dasan and Aviram, informed on him. Okay, so now we realize that it was the second encounter that led to Pharaoh hearing. Thus, by recounting Moses' early encounter with them, the Torah lets us know how this report reached Pharaoh. Nevertheless, we're not given an explanation as to why the Torah tells us that Moshe became frightened. To resolve this question, Rashi cites the interpretation of the Medrash, which explains that Moshe's fear was not motivated by concern for his own future, but rather resulted from his worry that perhaps the Jewish people were not worthy of redemption. That's the reason for Rashi's second interpretation. Okay? Now, I'm going to go diving into this. I'm going to race into it because I want to give you guys something positive to leave home with, to leave today, instead of leaving you on a questionable note. So I can delete the ad here. Sorry. Okay. Fine. When the great become frightened. So we now understand clearly the question, why do we need to know Moses' emotion? Makes no difference. Who cares that he became afraid? Our sages taught, this is the second paragraph, a verse never departs from its plain meaning. This principle should apply in the present instance, where Rashi not only gives an alternative, straightforward explanation of Moses' fear, but presents it before the Midrashic interpretation. This is the Rashi style. The fact that Rashi brought the literal interpretation first means that it's actually very, very literal, that he was afraid. We must therefore assume that even according to the plain meaning of the phrase, and Moshe became frightened, that he feared for his life because it had become known that he killed the Egyptian, there is an explanation, at least according to the approach of Drush, as to why Torah mentions his fear. So what is the reason that the Torah mentions his fear? To understand the above, let us cite the comments on the Medrash on the verse, and Yaakov became frightened. To understand the Moshe's fear, we have to go to an earlier such precedent in the Torah, where we learn that Yaakov became frightened and Yaakov was distressed. What does the Gemara tell us about Yaakov's fear and distress? This is earlier when Yaakov was confronting Esau, his nemesis, after, was it 34 years. After 34 years, he hadn't seen his brother. He was trying to kill him. Rav Pinchas said, in the name of Rav Reuven, 2 people received promises from the Holy One, blessed be He. The foremost of the patriarchs, which is Jacob, and the foremost of the prophets, Moses. And nonetheless, they both became frightened. That's concerning. It's from the Gemara, right? This Gemara appears in... No, this is the Medrash. It's a Medrash from Bereshis Rabbah. The foremost of the patriarchs, this is Jacob, the Holy One, blessed be He, told them, behold, I will be with you. And yet ultimately Yaakov became very frightened. The foremost of the prophets, this is Moshe, the Holy One, blessed be He, told him, behold, I will be with you. That was at the burning bush. And yet ultimately Moshe became frightened.
Same thing.
No, hang on.
Same message.
When did he tell him I'll be with you? Did he tell him I'll be with you before? The burning bush, he was 80 years old.
Right, that's later.
Hang on. This is interesting because he was much younger at this point. That's
Right.
very interesting. Very, very interesting chronological question here. Okay, but anyways, this is from the Medrash. The foremost of the prophets, this is Moshe, the Holy One, blessed be He, told him, behold, I will be with you. And ultimately, Moshe became frightened. This is intimated by the verse, and God told him, do not fear Og. Oh, it's a different fear. There's a different time that Moses feared. There's another time. So even though God told him, I'll be with you at the burning bush, nevertheless, when Moses brings the Jewish people towards the promised land, at the threshold of the promised land there by Syria, at the mountains of the Golan Heights area, and they confront Og, king of Bashan, that's when it says, Vayira Moshe. And Moshe was afraid. And God says to Moshe, do not fear him. And it is relevant to offer the reassurance, do not fear him. Al Tira is what Hashem says to Moshe, only to one who fears. I'm not sure if over there it says that Moshe was afraid, or if God just tells him, don't be afraid of him, which means don't be afraid because obviously you are afraid. But either way, Moshe exhibited fear at least a second time in his life, right? The commentaries on the Medrash differ regarding the intent of the passage. Some maintain that the Medrash is praising Yaakov and Moshe. How? Although they received promises from God, they did not rely on the promise, fearing that perhaps they had sinned. And thus they were no longer worthy of having God's promise fulfilled. In fact, the Torah tells us by Yaakov's fear, it says, Katonti, I am diminished from all of God's kindnesses with me. And Rashi explains there by Jacob, he says, look, maybe I already outlived my stay. I used up my credit, right? Because of all the wonderful things that God did for me in the house of Lavan. I'm not sure if I still have credit. Right? So this would have been a positive, right? However, other commentaries explain that the intent of the Medrash is that one should not learn from their example, for one ought not to be afraid. This is interesting. What you should not learn from Moshe and from Yaakov. Rather, one's heart should be settled, trusting in God. This intent is apparent from the plain meaning of the continuation of the Medrash. There, the Medrash in Bereshis continues, the prophet Yeshayahu admonishes the Jewish people, telling them, you have forgotten God who made you, and you have continually frightened throughout the day. In that same Medrash about Jacob and Moshe, which means the prophet rebukes them for being afraid. Remember, the most oft repeated directive in all of Torah, Al Tira, don't be afraid. So there in the Medrash, the prophet tells us, together adjacent to Yaakov and Moshe's fear, the Medrash tells us that Jeremiah, Isaiah, Yeshayahu admonishes the Jewish people of being afraid. So we're clearly working towards a place over here where fear is non grata, emotion non grata, right? The view of the commentaries that one ought not be afraid is worthy of exploration. This is now the Rebbe's beginning his insight. What's wrong with fearing? That one is unworthy of the fulfillment of God's promises because his service is imperfect and that he has sinned. Is it such a terrible thing to be afraid? What's wrong with fear?
Not trusting in God.
But maybe you're trusting in God so much, you're saying, maybe I'm not worthy.
Well, there you're assuming it's like very, it's almost like a transaction, like your merits and Hashem's kindness is exactly balanced. But Hashem, could give you kindness. Even if you
Okay,
don't
so
merit
what Yitzchak is touching on right now is very interesting. He's saying you're relating to God in a transactional manner. Imagine you're related to your dad like that. Imagine you're related to your wife like that. Well, I did this for her and that for her and the other thing for her, so probably there'll be dinner at home tonight, I think, right? What kind of relationship is that? That's not a relationship. That's a transaction, right? Love is like love. Love is not fickle.
Not transactional.
Yeah, love is love. So that's a very interesting point. And by the way, very, very much a direction in which this is going. Very, very much. Because fear reduces your relationship with God into a transaction. Whereas confidence and love increases your relationship with God into a unconditional love. Okay, that's where we're going. All right. So, what's wrong with fear, says the Rebbe? On the contrary, at first glance, this appears to be a very positive quality. One's humility is so great that he's always concerned that his divine service is not flawless. And then he isn't. This draws focus to the nature of the attribute of bitachon, trust in God, which we are commanded to pursue. Now, I want you to know that all my teachings on bitachon, on the gates of trust, come from here. This is the original text, which opened my eyes and guided my vision, my perception of how to approach fear, anxiety with regards to your problems, right? So the Rebbe is challenging the very foundation of the doctrine of bitachon. Emunah means faith. What does faith mean? That no matter what happens, I know that God is almighty and God knows what he's doing. That's faith. Faith means that even if it doesn't turn out so good, I know that God ultimately is in control. But bitachon is different. Bitachon doesn't mean that I know that God is has a plan. Bitachon means I trust that it's going to be good. That's what bitachon actually means. Bitachon means it's actually going to be good. Whence the notion? The Rebbe is asking first the question, what's wrong with fear? Now the Rebbe is asking, what's up with the whole notion of bitachon, of trust? Let's see. This question that draws the focus to the nature of the attribute, to the attribute of bitachon, trust in God, which we are commanded to pursue. Now it's interesting that it's a biblical commandment not to be afraid, by the way. Do you know that? You know where we're commanded to do so? In Parashas Kiseitze, towards the end of the Torah, it says, Kiteitzei la milchama lo vecha, when you go out to war against your enemies, lo tira mehem. You're not allowed to be afraid of them. In fact, the mightiest soldiers of the Jewish army were not in the front, but rather in the back lines of the Jewish army. They were given clubs of iron to break the legs of any deserters from the Jewish battlefield. Because tchilat nefila nesiga, the beginning of defeat is retreat. Fear is the beginning of your failure. Right? Shh. So the fear is a biblical prohibition. Right? And the Rebbe is really diving to the depth of this idea. Bitachon is not merely the faith that God has the potential to bestow good upon a person and save him from adversity and the like. That's not what bitachon means, that God can if he wants to. Rather, bitachon means that the person trusts that God will actually do this, the good result. And his trust is so absolute that he's completely serene and does not worry at all. Zero anxiety, friends. That's what it means.
That's really good.
What?
Non-transactional.
Yeah, that's beautiful explanation. As Chavis Salavov states, as the duties of the heart states, duties of the heart was written by Rabbeinu B'chaye.
Sure.
One of the modules in the duties of the heart is Gates of Trust, Shari Bitachon, which I highly, highly encourage you to watch. I see friend Marks has watched it twice, and she said it's life-changing for her. Me too. I highly encourage you to watch it at jewishgardens.com/trust. jewishgardens.com/trust. It's about a series of classes on Gates of Trust, the original text. As Chavis Halavava states, the essence of bitachon is the serenity felt by the person who trusts. His heart relies on the one in whom he has placed his trust, that he'll do what is best and most appropriate for him in the matter at hand. So in other words, no fear. The definition of bitachon means no fear, and that you will actually get the result that you desire. And now the Rebbe is asking, why? Why? The grounds of such certainty require explanation. Maybe I'm not worthy. Have you ever thought of that? Maybe I'm not deserving, right? Maybe I'm not God's gift to mankind, right? Even when a person has an explicit divine promise, it's possible that sin would cause the promise not to be fulfilled. This surely applies when there is no explicit promise. If you're a Jacob, if you're a Moses, maybe you ran out of credit. But how about if God didn't actually explicitly command you that he's going to be with you? Now what? Then maybe you're not so hotsy-totsy, right? Maybe it's not going to be as good as you think, right? This surely applies when there is no explicit promise. Moreover, the concern lest sin cause the promise not be fulfilled is applicable to everyone, for there is no one righteous on earth who does only good and sinneth not, right? If even Jacob, our patriarch, had this fear, it surely applies to others, okay? And now we've clarified the question, right? We've clarified the question. The problem is, why is Moses afraid? That was the question. Why do we need to know that Moses is afraid? And we then brought the measures that criticizes Moses and Jacob for having been afraid despite God's promise. Okay, and then the Rebbe dives deep into the essence, and he says, "What's wrong with fear? Why should fear be something which we're not allowed to do? Why should it be prohibited? Why should we be commanded to trust in God that we will get the good result that we desire without anxiety? Maybe we're just being naive. Does the Torah want us to be naive? Is that the goal? The Torah wants us to be just sort of Pollyanna-like and just hope for the best and just, be positive. That's it. How about if I want to be realistic, right? Like what's wrong with that? So this is where we're going, friends, in a beautiful transformation of our emotion to be able to take this to the next level, applying it to our own lives, where we can reach a point where we are able to eliminate any fear from our lives. That when you're dealing with an impossible situation, if you're dealing with an impossible situation, I'm just going to conclude with this. If you're dealing with a situation where you say, it's never going to change. Okay, you're saying that is what's going to cause it to never change. But if you have the courage to say, it's going to be good. I don't know how. The Rebbe is going to explain this. I don't know how it's going to change. That's God's problem to figure out how it's going to change. Maybe there'll be a cure invented. Maybe, I don't know, some cure will come out of nowhere. Maybe the relationship will be mended because something happens, right? Maybe the seller will decide to sell in the most magnanimous manner, right? It's not your problem.
You mentioned about two types of fear. Yeah, it's important to understand.
What are two types of fear? I said that?
Earlier.
I don't think I said two types of fear. What does that mean?
I
Yeah, I don't think I said that.
Two levels of fear.
No, I don't think I said that. Either way, we're going to cover this in a series, guys. Okay, it's going to take us a couple days, a couple weeks. So bear with us over here as we go through this life-changing doctrine of trust, eliminating all fear. Good contemplatives can come up with something like mental potholes or negative circular thoughts that can slow one down by thinking too much about them. Okay, I didn't get that. I used to get nervous and dread during presentations in college, and by the time I had to do it, I would have a full-blown panic attack because I obsessed too much about it. That's a bad thing. When manifesting in creation, counterproductive thoughts should not be entertained. Good. Okay. All right. We know that Joseph cried, correct, when he was reunited with Benjamin, but we don't know his emotion. All right. What if you're afraid? What if you're not afraid? What if you're just angry? I think anger is okay. I mean, anger is a negative emotion, but anger is dangerous. It's a dangerous emotion. Let's clarify fear, and then we can apply the cousins of fear afterwards. All right. I'm going to end it over here, guys. Have a great day. Shalom, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Wasn't Moses angry when he saw